Rules are mostly made to be broken. Douglas MacArthur. The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules. Captain Barbosa. It is the spirit of the game, not the letter of the rules, which is important. That last one is Gary Gygax. I am the disembodied voice of creative director for Nerdcrafty.com, Samantha, and I am absolutely pleased as punch to be bringing you this wonderful, wonderful panel of GMs and storytellers to discuss what it means to approach the rules and maybe share a little bit of their homebrew knowledge with us to help us find our way around some of those trickier situations. Shane, let's start with you. What is the way that you like to approach making a ruling when you're running a game?
Yeah. I have a couple examples from the game just now.
Go for it.
Zach asked me if he could use the dust of dryness on the gelatinous cube. I didn't have much time to look it up as normal, games go. You don't want to spend too much time flipping through stuff, but it might have worked rules-wise. But reading it, I found is like one of the easiest ways to, if you just sit back and go, all right, tell me what it says. And you can usually make a pretty good ruling through that because you just don't know the ruling off the top of your head. So it says a water elemental or a creature made of liquid. I would think in that when I think that and I see dust of dryness, I'm thinking this is meant for creatures that are almost pure water or mostly water, So it's how do you guys feel about that?
Well, for me personally, like in a situation like that, I'm thinking about two things immediately. One is, would this be hilarious or fun if it worked? And two, would this be broken if it continued to work? Because if you put a little too little leeway into it and you're like, why not dust of dryness? Everything, and then you desiccate whatever you're fighting, be it a person or a gelatinous cube. We're all mostly water anyway. Then your campaign turns into fighting rock golems for the rest of it, and that's it. But there's a part of me that's just like, that would be hilarious to see it shrivel like a snail with salt if you let it happen. And then maybe afterwards, depending upon the length of the session or, how long, or, if it's a one shot or whatever, you have a discussion with the player and just be like, okay, so it was really funny. We did it that time. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the parameters of when this would and would not work in the future. So we both have a good understanding, because I don't want you to waste your dust. And, I also don't want you to feel like you're being cheated out of being able to utilize this fun tool.
I think one of the things I was looking at was just like looking back and forth, even if the dust of dryness did not work, or let's say it would work, that cube had like 8 hit points left,
Oh.
Yeah, it was almost dead. So, I don't have a problem because if it got to that point of getting over to that, because I didn't intend for that possession to work. If you're watching, it was just, straight rolls. It was just that the spirit was just going to try to possess him if he moved, and it tried, and then he got his. And if he would have succeeded, he would have been able to move and do that, at least an attack or, however. But I agree with a lot of that. Of what you said.
I think there isn't like a specific direct relationship, but I want to know what level the player characters were, because 8 hit points to me doesn't sound like a lot, but that's because I'm mentally in a level 15 space.
I meant to say it had 8 hit points left. It had 8 hit points left at that point.
And what level were they?
They were all level 7.
Oh, yes. Then okay. Then yeah, essentially a spirited kick would have done it for like a barbarian or something.
Yeah, I may be misremembering, but I did know that like on the next turn, they were probably more than likely going to kill it.
Okay,
regardless of what they did. So I wasn't too concerned for that.
I'm sorry, I just love the fact that you said I'm in a level 15 headspace, because I imagine that you just walk around at level 15 in your day-to-day life.
Love it.
Different from
Confidence. It's wonderful.
It's different from reality. In reality, we're maybe level 3. We're so close to being level 3. But level 15 headspace.
I can
Oh,
honestly
you hit
say
level
that-
3. You got to decide what you want to be when you grow up. I don't.
Lots of room to grow. Lots of room to grow. I can honestly say that it's been a while since I've actually run any traditional TTRPGs. I'm more of a story game person myself, whether it be where it's more GM full, where all the players are collaborating to tell the story. I mean, or it's where the GM is also facilitating, which means they're also able to be a player with the other players. So, but I will tell a story about like a fairly recent Pathfinder first edition game that I was in. And this is an observational ruling. So we had a druid, and they were trying to put a spell on a particular creature. I don't remember what level we were at the point. But this druid decides, now, mind you, we're on land, and she wanted to take out this creature. So she cast Aboleth's Lung on it. And anybody that's not familiar with Aboleth's Lung, it says, targets are able to breathe water freely. However, they can no longer breathe air. So we were all on land. She was putting this on a land creature's head, and the DM at the time ruled that it worked. So basically, she choked out the creature and was successful in using Aboleth's Lung. She continued to use this for every game thereafter. So it became a meme.
Yes.
And in service of humor and the story, it was fine, because it was kind of like, that's the druid's thing. That's what she's going to do all the time to like as her starting move. So, I mean, my personal opinion is that if it's in service of the story and it doesn't hurt like the narrative, then why the hell not? And this was a running series, so she had a chance to develop her creature and then slowly got out of using Aboleth's Lung as her first move in every encounter. But I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I was like, really? Okay. All right.
Now I'm willing to bet. I don't know anything about that game, but I'm willing to bet even though they couldn't breathe, they could still like function for a few turns or something like that out in combat. Like outside of combat, I'm sure they were like just keeling over, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, like she cast it on an opponent and basically choked it out. So
right. Yeah, it's something that, like I said, I don't know how it's built in that system, but I'm willing to bet there's a lot of ways to resist it or get around it or stuff like that. Which
spell resistance, actually, will negates. So it's like a will saving throw will negate it.
Right, but it's not something where they read a spell, maybe read it incorrectly, and then are trying to force it to do this thing. This is like actually what the spell does.
Correct.
Like,
correct.
Word for word. Which is probably the most important thing about the rules is not like they're not there to beat people over the head with.
Mm-hmm.
They're there so that everyone can have what I call I forgot the word. Like a floor where you don't have to ask me what movement is. You can read your movement. You know how far you go. I know how far you go. There's no miscommunication or anything. That's the general like backbone of what the rules are for, in the sense of the tougher questions don't need to be answered. As long as we all have a general understanding of how the world works. If someone's trying to read a spell try to force it to make it work some way, and then being upset that it doesn't work it's really something to talk to them. Like conversation is probably the best way to do it, even if it's like in the game. If it's something that can wait to afterwards, like it's really important for everyone to have an understanding of that, like, you don't want arguments to come up because those are gonna ruin the game. So it's really important to have an understanding with everyone at the table that you can bring something up, discuss it, and make a ruling. But everyone needs to understand that whatever that ruling ends up being, whether it's for or against, that's how it is, and then we can talk about it after the game. Or I've seen it suggested, talk about it the day after the game, like sleep on it, see if it really bugs you, and if it really bugs you, then talk about it. And communication is key, and going over the spells is key too. In the sense of, like, if you read it out loud, you read it out loud with them, and you read it and you go, okay, yeah, that is exactly how it works, or you've experienced it before. That's exactly how that spell works. That they are going to choke out and suffocate with this water breathing only spell on them. But it's important to set these boundaries up.
I think that the conversation should be more than just even on spells and things like that. Like the idea of the adversarial DM seems rather archaic currently. I don't really know anybody who does that in their day-to-day games. And there's this idea though that permeates that the players have to spring a surprise plan on you, because if they don't surprise you with it, then
you'll try to ruin it.
The evil folks will try to ruin it or figure out a loophole or something like that. I love the discussions when they try to plan something out, and I just keep thinking, oh wow, that would actually work. That's a phenomenal plan. And once in a while, nudging the circumstances so that it does work, because it would be more entertaining for it to work. It's like watching an action movie. Like 9 times they should have failed before the end of the movie. You just nudge it in the right direction. So
dramatic license. That's
you're
what
not
it is.
dead. Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
And it'd be a short movie if they failed.
Yeah.
I think that it helps when, at least the tables I'm usually at, which are usually Mayday tables, the players are already into, and I'm usually a player, but they're already coming in like, I've got about 20 ways for you to nerf my shit completely. I don't even want you to give me an advantage. I want this to be bad for them. This person I've made, hurt them. So it is exactly what you said, like, to come to the table as this, like, I'm gonna get you for real, like, it's not really meeting that energy properly. It's not helping people feel like they can come with a game experience custom to what they want, that it has to be this game we're still trying to play from 40 years ago, which not the same game.
No, it's not.
No.
That reminds me of what does a player want in a game. And I believe it comes down to, there's 2 parts to it. The first one, and these parts, they're not equal. They're for each person, it can be bigger or smaller on a scale of how they like to approach the game. And one of them is role play. They like to be able to play the character they made. They want to be able to do the things that they would like to do, play the character how they would like to play it. And the other part is challenge. Because if you don't have a challenge, then it feels not as rewarding to play that character. If you have a game where the characters, whatever they say, happens, even if it's being reasonable, it loses a lot of that rewarding feeling of not being able to do these things. Even, it's like the, what's that? I think it's a Twilight Zone episode where a guy goes to heck, but but it's all like glamorous and it's like glamorous, like it's a casino. He wins all the time, and he's just like bored out of his mind. And the whole time it's like he thinks he's in heaven, but really he's in heck, in a situation where he can't get out, and there's nothing to do but win, and it gets boring.
Yeah.
We've got some questions in the chat for you guys if you want to field some of those. One of the recent ones is, how are some ways to make challenges more fun for players?
I've got a couple answers, but I can hand it to someone else.
Yeah, so one of the games that I'm currently playing right now is The Between, and one of the beautiful things about it is, well, it's based in PBTA, but it's powered by the apocalypse for those that don't know. But one of the beautiful things about it is that usually when you roll, or like, you know, before you roll on certain things, it's like, you know, for stakes, it's like, what do you think can go wrong? And then the player would say, it's like, I think this is going to happen for the night move or the day move or whatever, where it's risky and you're doing something that you fear. So player says it's like how they think it's going to go wrong. And then the keeper goes, it's going to be worse in this way. And then when it happens, you know, the keeper will narrate, okay, this is what's going to happen, as it's really going to go bad. And then you have the choice of doing what's called a mask to be able to say, I want to bump up my die roll mechanically. And then I narrate something from this mask, like about the backstory for my character. So it rewards you by like knowing what really piss poor thing is going to happen. But then you can always bump up the die roll, tell your backstory, and then get a better result. So, I mean, like, in a way, it's like, you know, finding out what can go wrong. And then it's like a mini discussion. Like, you know, you find out how bad it could be. And then you always have an out. So.
I don't know if it's a mechanical response or not, but using the framework of D&D, I put them in a situation I don't know how they can get out of, and trust in the fact that 5 people working together are smarter than me.
Yes.
Like, I've had circumstances, and what that does is when they propose something extraordinary or wild or a little out there, you can just say, oh yeah, that does work. And then they feel like it is because of that idea that they have surmounted the difficulty. Because mechanically they should lose. They're outnumbered. They are facing individuals who have, or monsters who have more hit points or bigger damage dealers or whatever. It looks hopeless. They come up with something, and because it's their idea, as long as it has that just spoonful of rationality in it, then I'll probably let it go. And it makes the difference between success and failure. So they feel like they've accomplished it. So that's my general rule.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the moving target also. Like, there's like memes about it, but like the dungeon master whose players are killing it, and they add another 0 to the hit points of the big bad that they're fighting, just to be like, okay, that was really easy. I should have prepped better. But huge fans of that too, because I'm someone that plays and DMs like cinematically, because there's just most of our storytelling is coming from watching television and film. So if I know they're going to be in this room and they're searching for X, if they guess it right away, hey, it's moving.
Yeah.
It's moving. Because that's not fun. Unless like narratively the party really needs to find it first, if it's like a narrative boost. But otherwise, just DM it. Just move it. It's backstage.
Sam, that the question was how to make skill checks more fun. I just want to make sure I got it right.
No, it was how to make. Hold on, I'll pull it back up. Just how to make challenges more fun.
I know that there's 2 ways that I would think towards making a challenge fun. Failing forward, where failing a roll doesn't mean that you can no longer pursue that. Such as you leap over a gorge to get to the other side, you roll a 1, and now it's not that you fell in, you're clinging near the bottom, like holding on, and then that means that other players have to come and figure something out to help that player. Now it's not that. And then there's one that I will do, like the ultimatum, which is this actually this sounds weird, but it makes it a bit more like it will include the fun, because say the character wants to do something so crazy, but it still may work, but there's no way to fail forward on it. Like this, it's like literally the character is going to try to jump, do something crazy in the air, and like throw a grappling hook, to try and get back without suffering any consequences. Something completely crazy, but possibly feasible, and they really want to do it. But failing this way is like, there's no way your character's going to survive. Realistically, by the rules, your character's going to die. So I give the ultimatum, fully transparent about it. I go, okay, your DC is 20 or 25 or something. Get all your bonuses, get all your things. If you fail by a little bit, you're going to be dangling. If you fail by more than 5, your character's going to die. You don't have to do this, but you can if you want to, but I'm going to be completely transparent on this roll. Do whatever you can do. If you're okay with making this decision, go for it. And it is very, like, as a player, it's very interesting to be like, you have your character's life in your hands, like literally, but you don't have to make that roll. You can go, I'm going to try to figure something else. And it brings a different kind of like fun to it, to be able to be like holding it. And then if you do it, oh my God, like what a rush, especially if you succeed, like everyone goes crazy. Like it is such an exhilarating thing to do, So like, yeah, those are my 2 things that make it funner, is fail forward and ultimatums kind of thing.
Okay, got another question in chat, and it is one of maybe the most controversial questions for a Dungeon Master or Game Master, and I'm wondering if maybe you already know what it is. Do you fudge dice for the sake of story?
I do not fudge.
All the time.
Yeah. There's 2 sides to this. There's 2 sides to this.
Like I
I
fudge dice to hit, to miss, whatever I feel is narratively helped in the situation.
Yes. There's nothing worse than having a player spend a real calendar year following a story arc. They are right in front of the Prince X or Big Bad, and then you roll a natural 1. Like, what does that mean? Like a hurricane? Yuck. Have a good time. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, in service of the story and making sure that everybody has a good time, of course. Because, I mean, again, yes, you want to challenge your players. You want to make sure that they're not having it easy, because that's boring as hell. But I mean, when you're staring in the face of this can happen. I mean, the rationale is there. The narrative is there. It's got the possibility. I mean, why the hell not? I mean, it doesn't have to be strict all the time. So
I hear you. I'm probably going to be the dissenter on this, but hear me out. The only issue I have with it is that you can never talk about it. You can't. You can talk about the game afterwards, but if you even hint at, or you misremember, or you say something wrong, that's like, oh, I helped you guys out. I wasn't going to let the story fail. It takes a little bit away from the story. It turns it from that feeling of accomplishment to something that was something less than an accomplishment. And
I don't have answers for how to fix that, because the dice are going to be dice. They're going to roll whatever. They don't care what you have planned. So the only the only solutions I can think of is that if it's important, it shouldn't be left up to the dice, if possible. You know.
I don't see what you're talking about as an issue, simply because I agree with your sentiment. Okay, I do. But as a person who's been through acting training and who's an attorney, I can just straight face lie to people all the time. Like,
you remember that time when I slayed the dragon? Yeah,
You're
man,
so
that
awesome.
was all you.
I have a good consistency. Like if I like, because for me it's not difficult to remember the lie of the story. Okay, because I don't talk about the die roll when we talk about that moment. We talk about what was accomplished. You know,
We only talk about it if it failed. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I have this motif that I use on my online games where I will grab the camera and pull it onto my screen so they can see in Fantasy Grounds what I rolled as the Dungeon Master. If it's fun to pull that out. If it's not, well, they don't see it. And that's it. I don't talk about numbers when I'm describing something. It's hit, miss, fail, succeed, holding on by the vines, like you were saying. I think there is a validity to what you previously said with your ultimatum thing, where you talk about the mechanics and the mechanics raise the stakes. Absolutely, you can do that. I just don't talk about the result, like the actual die roll number. I think it takes me out of the experience, both as a player and as a DM, to say 17. It's always the description of what's happening as opposed to the die roll. So I don't remember, like I have goldfish memory when it comes to the actual number after my head has clicked as to what happened. I couldn't, it's not lying, because I don't remember if it was a 16 or a 17. I just remember if it hit or it didn't.
Yeah, I usually interpret it in like cinematically. So I mean, again, it's like it's never going to be a numeric thing. It's going to be, well, the rock slide. You hear the tick 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 of the single pebbles, which turn into the bigger rocks, which turn into the boulders that start falling down that are the size of your head, and then that's where it's like it starts to compound, and you're using the description to show them what's going on. You don't say, oh yeah, I rolled like, for you, it's like I rolled a 9, whatever. You don't do that. You just, this is what it is.
Yeah. And if you're a DM, like when I DM, I can't hold water, let alone a secret. Like, it is so important to have a friend who is not playing with you. Because you are coming up with plot, you're coming up with whatever, and you're like, this is so fun, and it's all spoilers. So you need someone, if not just to bounce ideas off of, to be excited and be like, oh, they almost failed, but I was like, I got it, and it was a 17. Like, if that part of the game experience, like telling that story, is fun, you gotta have someone that's not at the table to share it with, and that's fine.
Oh, Zach, I love that. I mean, I have somebody that is a sounding board for me. Like, when I play, like, my characters or whatever, I mean, like, I need him to be able to listen to me. It's like, this is my idea. This is what this crazy shit I'm going to do right now. So, love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a hard time lying, so I don't. I try to avoid it when I can. So,
yeah.
If I can be honest at the table, I can be honest with myself, and I can be honest, like, with them. So I think what we're all getting at is, if it's important, and the die roll doesn't matter, you can still have the die roll, or you can still have the fudge, to be able to have the story progress, But if you're someone like me who can't, like, keep it in, or like might slip or something, consider like not having it be based on a roll.
Yeah, I get that. I like it because, like, I still do the die rolls, because I have had narratively satisfying catastrophes because of die rolls, things that I would have never done except for the die roll. Like, I've had characters die in a campaign where I didn't plan on the character dying there, but it's a really cool moment for that to happen, and the players bought in. Like, it got to the point where I was like, your character may go down, one of my players, and she was like, if it has to happen, let it happen now. I was like, okay, let's roll some dice. And it was up to the dice. It was purely up to the dice because her story arc had finished. So she had already finished her thing. This was the grand campaign ending moment. And it's like, well, I mean, if she lived or if she died, both would be satisfying at this point. Her arc had completed, and it just so happened that she got hammered right in the face.
Oh my god.
And she fell, and everybody's frantic, and they're trying to save her, and then just failed saving throw after failed saving throw ended up with her dying. And it was like the basically the final fight. And it was just so satisfying, and I wouldn't have done that except for the dice. So that's why I like having the dice, because the dice gives like an excuse for something like that. And sometimes just, reading the room, seeing the faces, because, my initial reaction was like, she's getting like emotional. I could almost see tears welling up in the player's face. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. But I said out loud, it was like, your character may eat it. She's like, I'm ready for it, and she was like smiling behind it because it was an emotional moment. I was just like, this is perfect, and it was because of the dice. It was because of the dice that made it perfect.
That does remind me of a little caveat.
About just character death at a climax, and then character death somewhere way before that climax, right? Then there's multiple different kinds of players. There's some that they're kind of okay with rolling a new character. There's a very small group. They're okay. They have other character ideas, you're okay with it. There's other characters that are really attached to the first character that they made in this campaign, and it's the that character growth. It's going to stop if they die. So I came up with a little system that's a player opt-in, and it's pretty much I call it death is not the end or something like that. I have to look it up in my own notes, but pretty much it's like, okay, your character died. Do you want to roll a new character, or would you like to keep playing this character? Your character died, everyone had this moment, is this something you want to continue doing or do new? And if it's like, but God, I really wanted to finish my character's arc. I really wanted to see it to the end, right? Well, I came up with a table to roll on. And this table is pretty much like how this character can be revived. And like, there's one where it's like after a minute, there's like a black lightning bolt that strikes the body. And then the character gets back up. And it's like, well, what'd that do? And then, the DM, you go, you don't remember. You're like, I don't remember what? And you're like, you were talking to someone. You don't know where you were. And like, okay, well, what do we talk about? It's like, well, I don't remember. You don't remember. Do I remember anything? Yeah. You remember you made a deal and you said yes.
Oh, great. Good.
Nice.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So there's things where you can do, because, there's different ways that you can have a character come back. Like, death doesn't have to be final if you want to complete that character's arc. There's ways to be able to say, like, there's demons, there's gods. Maybe there's not gods, but there's powerful beings. They might come along, and you might have one where it's like you have the conversation with them while they're dead, and it's like one of the gods of death, and it's like, I'll revive you, and you can go do this thing, but this is a false life that only lasts 1 month, and then after that you're with me. And so it makes like a time like a schedule. You would make it for whatever the campaign was for. It's like, oh, you have a year if your campaign is like years long or whatever. But it gives them another chance to move forward. Anyway, Sam, did you or did anyone want to comment? So I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
Well, I have another question, if you guys are ready for one. Captain Zach wants to know if you have any particular homebrew rules that you use with inspiration.
I just did.
Oh, I love inspiration. I know that seems to be maligned, and maybe it's a rules as written thing, but I use rule as more inspiration than guideline. But for me, it's a classic kind of carrot to your players to promote the type of game that you want. Because if you're playing a game and you realize that the players are not engaging with certain aspects that you would want them to, that would be fun for them to engage in. Maybe they're just hyper focused on something else, or min-maxing and you want them to engage in the political sphere or role play more, or they're role playing so much that they're never getting into a fight or something of that nature. You can provide inspiration to promote the type of behavior that you want. The person speaks up and has a moment where they almost never role play, but then they just, no, my character wouldn't stand for that, and they start role playing the character. It's like D12 inspiration dice, because that was awesome. Because a lot of us, I'm speaking me, but I see this a lot, use milestone XP. Okay. So experience points aren't necessarily a reward, because you don't want to have like disproportionate, oh, well, you're level 7 now, but everybody else is level 6 because you did that one thing. It seems like favoritism. And like gold and magic items to a certain type of player are very beneficial. But if you're not really a min-maxy player, then you may not like magic items. Or if you're like a wizard and you already have the staff and robes that you want, a ring of whatever maybe, but it never gave me the visceral reaction of like a fighter character getting a super sword or whatever. So inspiration to me is just that reward. It's that's what yes, you're doing the thing. Here's some inspiration for it. Because what are they going to do? It's going to change one die roll, at some point later. So it's not game breaking in a long-term sense. And they feel like, oh yeah, Senpai noticed me. So like,
yes,
seems to work.
Yeah, I think I usually, when I DM with a lot of like new to TTRPGs, new to any game that is like more complicated than like Chutes and Ladders. So they're already like, kind of don't want to play this, but I'm here to try because I just like want to role play or I want to try this thing. So the more that I can do to make this game feel like literally anything else this person has done before, to make them feel like they know the rules, is great. So exactly like you said, if they do something cool, the mechanical equivalent of a high five is inspiration. And I am easy to impress. If you are a bard and you sing or even just start projecting, I'm like, okay, get into it. D8, like, give it freely. Also because the people I play with are usually murder hobo-ish. So you're going to need the inspiration anyway.
That'd be an interesting character to make. Like, the character concept is a murder hobo. It's like the character itself, like they go around, it's kind of like a fae like character. They just go around and wherever they are is home, and if anyone intrudes, they're gonna get it. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to.
If I have a player can pitch literal the words murder hobo to me, I'm gonna say you're the team cleric, and we're just gonna see how that goes.
See, now I'm interested in the concept of murder hobo cleric.
Yeah.
It's like following the god of death. Like, what's their motivation at this point?
Yeah, trickery. But get on topic for a second. Inspiration, like,
Like I came up with my own mostly because I have such a hard time remembering to give it out. Like there's no in D&D, there's no like specific rule to give out inspiration. It just says, if they do something cool, they do something awesome, they impress you, give them a inspiration, right? And I just have a hard time like remember like I'm focused on so many things, running so many things at once that they could do a cool thing and it might float over my head about how cool it was, right? It's just a me thing, I guess. I don't know if other people have trouble remembering to give it out.
For me, like the player doing something cool is I as me as a DM, that's what I'm there for. I am there to facilitate the player doing something cool. Okay. It's something that surprises me. It's something that makes them happy. It's that cheering moment with everybody. So I like my antenna are always trying to pick that up because those are the moments that I'm trying to like. That's how I gauge whether or not people are having a good time.
I'm not saying it's a DM. I'm saying it's a me thing. I have a lot of trouble just doing that. That's why I came up with a little system for being able to use inspiration outside of a role, because that makes it more. You give inspiration, and you can it's a roll with advantage, and I think everyone kind of breaks it and they just let it be a roll afterwards. But that's okay. I don't care. It's however you want to play. But imagine like your inspiration, you can use it for other things. Like I remember someone mentioning using an inspiration to be able to have a situation come up that they can use. For example, you have an inspiration and you can use it, and then you can have because I have lists and crap like that, and I typed, I completely forgot about this, and say that the players are in the situation and it's just like maybe they went to down and bought some things and they came to this place and it's like, we forgot the rope. Town's like 2 weeks back or something. And then you can use an inspiration to go, I completely forgot about this rope. And so you can use your inspiration and just like retroactive get things, like common or like things that you would need in that situation that you may not have known that you needed at the time before, So being able to like use your inspiration for other things. The other one I heard that I really liked was using your inspiration to create an NPC. And this was called I Know a Guy. And it's exactly, I can't remember who I watched that talked about this, but I really liked it. And it's taken from that scene from Empire Strikes Back where Solo and everyone's in the Falcon and it's all damaged and they're like kind of screwed. They have nowhere to go. And then Han Solo goes, I know a guy. Cloud City, it's not far from here. So being able to use your inspiration and go, okay, I'm going to make an NPC and he's going to have, say like they dead end on like a plot point, right? They don't know where to go. You as the DM, you're like, oh man, I don't know how they're going to get around this. They kind of needed blah, blah, blah to happen, right? So you can use an inspiration and go, I know a guy. I'm just making stuff up. He's an archaeologist. He digs up stuff. He might know something about this. And then they can go talk to him. Or if they need something, they can go talk to a character, So
now
things. Yeah.
I have a mechanic question about that, and I think Mads, you might be our person to speak on it, because like most of us were talking about like D&D and inspiration mechanic. It's in the book. It's pretty simple. But what happens when it's not D&D, or like you were talking about before, games where we all decide what happens next? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who decides who gets inspiration, and how does that work?
That's tough. That's because especially if you're like in a game where you play together, like it's like co-creation kind of games.
Well, I mean, it's actually a pretty great process collaboratively. I mean, I've recently played a few story games where, like Venture, which is like in it can be in a fantasy realm, but I mean every player is collaborating to create this story. based on prompts, but then we have scenes that we discuss outside of like actually role-playing the scenes. And there's also Paranormal Incorporated, which can play either like X-Files to Scooby-Doo, depending on how you want to play at that particular table at that particular time. And then what we did, like for these collaborative tables, is again, with Venture, it's idle dreaming. You're talking about it outside of the actual characters. Like what kind of scenes, like what's the next part of the narrative? Like what prompt are we using from when we created the quest in the beginning? And then with Paranormal Incorporated, I mean, we were inspiring each other for creating these characters and this story. And then when somebody came up with something that was really cool, to be able to include in a scene, it's like, we said, yeah, sure. I mean, like, it's a one shot. I mean, like, we can just totally include that and then see where it takes us. And then that ended up developing burning questions that now I want to create a series on this. So we're going to go beyond the one shot. Like, what happens when this character decides to write their paper on the other character and the other character doesn't know about it? And then what happens when this character decides to, like, well, what happens to the ghost that she gooed and turns it into, like, where does she store that goo now, So all these wonderful things that have come out of the collaborative process, and we inspire each other and then allow things to happen. So, I mean, in a game that's collaborative and doesn't necessarily have inspiration, well, what if you gave yourself, like, you creatively came up with something. I mean, like, you made something work even within the mechanic, the die roll, and it made sense. You give credit for saying, well, shit. I mean, you can totally use that skill. You can totally, add a clue. Like what you just described, it's not a capital C clue that was listed in the game, but we're gonna make that a clue because that sounded so goddamn cool. Excuse my language. You know what I mean? I mean, like, that's kind of the cool stuff that you can do with other games, and not necessarily call it inspiration, but it's more like we're giving you this credit, or
it's the reward for engagement.
And exactly, I love that.
That's what it comes down to too. The inspiration mechanic is all about trying to increase player engagement, and it tries to increase it on both ends too. It tries to go, you will get a physical reward in the game that you can use if you are playing your character, to put it simply. And it makes non-role players interested in doing it. It makes role players interested in doing it because the other part I forgot that I just remembered just now is that you can give your inspiration to other people. If you got one, you can give it to someone else, and you go, "Dang, that was cool. Here, take mine."
There's it's not inspiration per se, but I mean, I just played a game of The Strange, which is based on Cypher System, last night. And it's like, what I remembered is that they have something with the GM intrusions where for allowing the GM to make something happen to your character because you rolled pretty poorly, whatever, you get an XP that you can use towards something, and you get another point of XP that you give to somebody else. That second point of XP has to go to one of the other players. So, I mean, like, you're getting something happening to you narratively for the story, but then you're also getting something that you can use later for your characters. So, like, it's not quite inspiration, but I mean, it's like, hey, you're driving the narrative by allowing the failure to happen.
All right, well, we are quickly running out of time, so I just want to wrap up with everyone. If you have a homebrew rule that you especially love and hold dear to you, it doesn't have to be from D&D, it can be from any sort of collaborative gaming system. What would be that rule, and what does it do?
Who wants to go?
I have one. It's very specific and silly.
All right, go.
But I'm not even the GM, but this is something we made him do, unfortunately, with our shenanigans. is we play a game of Orpheus, which is like early 2000s White Wolf game. It's Vampire the Masquerade but with ghosts, basically.
Oh, cool.
And one of the rules that we determined was ghosts don't have phones, which makes it very hard to communicate as a party. It's one of my favorite things about the game because people have like tea about it. It's something certain players are pissed off about. But what it does is it makes the ghosts have to hang out with the living players because we don't have a phone plan. How are we going to communicate? How do we know when to gather? It is, like I said, very specific to the world. It is kind of a limit, but it's one of my favorites.
I'll just say the inspiration power that I came up with for this game. I've been enjoying it a lot. It gives characters a lot more ways to use it. Powers inside and outside a combat zone, and I don't have much more to say on it. Actually, it's I make new mechanics all the time, so it might not be my favorite forever, but I'm enjoying it right now.
Mine has to do with magical items. Actually, in a D&D scene, I always get frustrated that my players drop weapons for new weapons based on magical items. So I have it that once in a while, determined entirely by my own brain, if the players roll a natural 20 on an attack roll, something will happen to their weapon. Where it gains a property of a magical item. Because I've been playing this game for over 30 years at this point, because I'm super old. And I have like the second edition Encyclopedia Magica books in my collection. And the attributes of those magical items are really weird. It's like the Sword of Giant Slaying. It's a +2 sword that does +5 against giants, and will do an extra 2d6 or something against certain types of giants. So they have all of these different features, not just a +1 sword or a sword that shoots fireballs. Like, it'll have all of these things. So early on in the adventure, when the player's doing something in a dramatic moment, maybe it's their first big bad evil guy, and they hit this individual with a natural 20. Lightning sparks from it and purple haze, as if some heroic deity or whatever, the cosmos itself, is recognizing the heroic action that is happening with this blade. So in my world, magical items are made magical by the deeds that are done with them. That's why legendary weapons have legendary properties. Well, this is the beginning of your legend. So every time something like that happens, it's not every 20. It just gets to the point where, like, every time somebody rolls a natural 20, they like stare at me to see if something's going to happen. And I was like, no, it's just double damage this time, folks. But every few sessions, every few whatever, maybe it's been a few months in real time, they'll hit a natural 20, and I was just like, at this moment, the clouds part.
Yes.
And it seems like a jet of wind flows as if from the sky, and then directed by your blade, and this description will come up, and now they can like shoot mini tornadoes out of their axe. I don't know. It's something I just think of, whatever's contextually relevant at the time. It makes it so they never want to give up their weapon.
I just
They're
have
like,
one.
this is mine. It's a signature.
Yeah, I have one quick question. Can they become intelligent?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh my
absolutely.
God. Okay, yeah. Sorry. Okay. I know we're running low on time.
So it just creates that signature weapon. I almost discard finding magical weapon treasure because of this system, because they don't care. They're just, it's a +1 short sword. Who cares? I have this. It's Stormbringer. It brings the storms. And
it talks like a pirate.
Exactly.
So for the games that I play, or like, and I've noticed, I noticed RGM doing this every so often, and it's a really nice occasional thing to happen. And when I run my games, then I do try to adopt this when I can. So there's a mechanic called Paint the Scene. So you enter a location, And paint the scene involves all the players describing something they find in this particular scene, or there's a prompt about the particular location that you answer. And if the player narrates something like incredibly cool, like what they find in this place, then that keeper will allow them to take that thing that they just narrated and use it as a clue for the threat or the mystery that we're taking care of at the time, because it was so cool, it was so relevant that it's like, well, why the hell not? I mean, that's not in the rules anywhere. It's just the coolness factor, right? So that's an important homebrew rule, like, rule of cool. That is such a great homebrew by itself. So
Wonderful.
And I guess that's really the takeaway. Like, if it's fun, if it's cool, why not make it happen, right? But unfortunately, we are out of time. So I just want to thank all of our wonderful panelists for being here. And why don't you all go around and go ahead and say where everyone else can find you, all of the things that you're doing outside of this. Mads, let's start with you.
Okay, I'm Mads, she, her, they. You can find me at Madeline Colley on Twitter. I am gonna be creating my YouTube channel soon, which is gonna have some actual plays on it, of a variety of different TTRPGs. And I also have a podcast that is very, very new. So like the trailer and part 1 of episode 1 is out. It's called Stories from Chaos Edge. Again, it's actual play through a variety of TTRPGs. I'm starting off with a few story games, so that's what you're going to hear in the beginning of the first episode. So yeah, find me on Twitter, listen to the podcast, and hopefully catch my Madeline Colley YouTube channel when it comes out. All right, thank you.
Zakia, where can we find you, and what have you been working on?
Wait, which one was?
Zakia?
Oh, yeah, we missed the name. Oh, sweet. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. Yes, I'm Zakia. She, they. You can find me Twitter and Instagram at Zach the Drac, DRAK, not with a C. And I have a podcast with my friends that we also live stream on Twitch. We've played Delta Green, D&D, Orpheus. We're about to start a vampire game. That's at Mayday Roleplay. Also, character art, everything that Mayday does character art wise is also me. So if you just want to look at hot people, we have that as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Shane, how about you?
I'm Shane.
Hi, folks. I'm Shane. You can find me on Nerdcrafty occasionally, playing the Iron Hearts once every other week. I figure eventually I'll put all my writings down into a YouTube video and do short little YouTube videos. That'll probably be YouTube Shane B or something. And my wife, Regina, is currently working on the Nerdcrafty site. You can come and check her out. She works on various websites. And gosh, that's all that's going on with me.
Yep. And then last but certainly not least...
I'm Legal Kimchi. You can find me at Legal Kimchi at Twitter or what have you. I'm across all social media. Primarily, I'm known for my YouTube channel, youtube.com/legalkimchi, where I do video essays on TTRPG related and geek related topics. My latest one was about POC representation in media and why it's so important. You can also see one on metagaming, bioessentialism, things of that nature. If those things are the types of things that would interest you with a deep dive using scholastic works and my own thoughts into it, please feel free, give it a look. Like I said, youtube.com/legalkimchi. The magical weapons thing was actually, I made a video on that as well. So if you want a little bit more in depth as to how that system works, you can go there and check it out. And love to see you there.
Yeah, absolutely. So please, 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 everyone, go check out all of our wonderful panelists for this time around on all of the social media and all of the other media that they have. Again, thank you so much, and we're going to tune out for just a little bit, go back to our schedule, and we will come back with our player discussion panel. Thank you so much.